doing tantric massage and looking at myself and then experiencing that energy. And then
Mm.
I think there's a lot to learn by focusing on your body as a mystery school, and to understand that we're never complete. If we go into this place, I'm the therapist and you're the client, so I'm all healed and you need my help, which to one level is true because they're giving us money, then we just have a giant ego and we're unable to help them. If we start to understand that we're actually all one and we're generating these experiences for each other, and we come away from this hierarchy level, and you kind of accept that on a soul agreement level, maybe this person in front of you right now who's paying you to be their client and to heal you is about to teach you one of the greatest lessons of your life. And then you meet them. As soon as we throw money into the mix, there's this kind of like, well, you paid me, and then we're into this game of separation. But when we can stand
Mm.
out and see that it's a much bigger picture, like perpetrators and victims, who's really to blame when we're wanting to generate these experiences in duality. Now, if we take that to extremist levels of people who have been raped and abused, it's very difficult to get our heads around it. And sometimes terrible things do happen, and we shouldn't look at life like that, because people are just in such a state of traumatized separation. They're lashing out and doing terrible things. So we're not creating our universe. We're not attracting what we're a vibrational match to. We're living in a descending, low degraded world where people are in separation, traumatized, so they're hurting each other. That's when you need to actually stand in, do something, stand with your ego to help people get to a state where you can work within a collective consciousness, where you can use the laws of a vibrational universe and you can attract things and you can come into this level of 5D, but it's not always happening. So terrible things still happen. And our job is to kind of change that vibration, that world. But the space that you're in, when you're seeing clients, if they're finding you and coming to you, they must be of a slightly higher level of awareness to even book a session with you. And
Mm.
then I think you have to, drop that ego of being that therapist. You need to come into a space where it's total equal. I'm just holding space for you. I'm just observing. I'm
Mm.
just holding the masculine role, and I'm just going to witness you. And they're just paying you for them to witness you. But they're paying you because you've actually learned how to observe, how to hold space, how to do nothing. And the whole of level one is, how do I do nothing? And actually what people need the most is they don't need people to do anything for them. They just need a safe space for a few hours for someone to hold it for them. And then the session happens themselves. They're doing the session. It's their energy. Yes, we're learning a lot of small things we can do, but we're really learning to do as little as possible so that they're leading the session, they're having the experience, they're activating their cities, they're having the visions, we're not having it all for them because we've got the ego and they're surrendering, so we're taking their energy, and then we're almost having the spiritual experience for them in the heightened non-dual state, and they're kind of feeling relaxed because they've let go of some energy and some stress, so they feel good. There's not a very, they feel good, but you can do so much more when you come into a state of equality. And like we talked a lot
Mm.
about in level 2, having both third eyes open, that's the state we need to hold for them. So I wouldn't have the imposter syndrome. Don't have it. You're very good at doing nothing. It's important to remember that the work is holistic. So the holding session, yeah, we're holding space, but we have a lot of education to do before we get to that point. So we teach about breath, we teach about the nervous system, emotions, trauma release, how to work with those emotions. And we work with non-dual psychology, which, to be a psychologist, you have to train for 4 years. We're coming to this work either completely afresh, and then we have a lot to learn if we want to be therapists, or maybe you already are a therapist, maybe you already are a psychologist, maybe you've done life coaching, or you spent 10 years in self-development, so you already know a lot. There's a lot of people have issues with the approach of life coaches and working with trauma. So in this modality, you're free to bring all of the tools that when you can relate it to non-duality and the paradoxical way of thinking that we learn, which is like the basis of level 1, the basis of level 2. You have to do the week to really integrate that knowledge and that way of working, but we still can't miss out the psychology. And to me, it sounds like it's a relationship issue, it's a psychological issue. Maybe it's about being more patient, maybe it's about taking more responsibility for what you do, maybe it's about having more compassion for the other person, maybe it's about listening more and talking less, maybe it's projecting your mother onto her. It could be any of those things. So you have to sit with the client and listen, but work the tool that you're offered in this framework is the polarity framework to start to help them unpack it. And what that is really helpful in doing is we separate the masculine and the feminine, then we separate the mature and immature, then we see how they're integrated, and then we start to talk about ourselves as if we was not ourselves. The same as that, you ask that question, so who am I, and who's asking the question, and you go on that kind of spiritual riddle that helps you realize, okay, well, who am I? Well, I'm not thinking. So who is thinking? Who answers? What the polarity framework does on an emotional level, it puts us into that same space. You could say it makes us slightly schizophrenic because you're asking, is that my mature? Is that my immature? Is that my masculine, or is that my feminine? So you're leading somebody through that process, so they identify their own problems and they identify their own solutions on a mental and emotional level. And then that's what we take into the work. So it's a very simple system. And again, we're mostly listening, but we're learning to ask the right questions. So in your case, I don't think it's about a sound healing or a breathwork session or a meditation. I think it really is looking at your mind, at your psychology, maybe your history, and working through that with your partner or with somebody else. I wish I could just say, take a flower remedy and chant this mantra, and maybe it works, but quite often we have to put in the work. It's really important to see the difference between how self-practice will evolve, which is the same as saying how your integration will evolve from what you learn in the online course to what you learn in level 1 to what you learn in level 2. It's a natural progression of working with this energy, of maintaining it in your body, of increasing it, and then having the ability to share it with other people while increasing your own experience of this energy that lives in your body. It has to be, it has to be cared for. It has to be maintained the same way that your body needs to be cared for and maintained. So does your energy. So you might want to see if you're, the same triggers are constantly coming up and you're having to keep doing the hand scream and the emotional release. I think something should be missed, because a lot of the emotional release tools, they should be used at the start. The trauma should come out of the body and then we should transmute it. So our practice after level 2, at least my practice in the morning, it's much more about sitting and feeling energy move through my body and expanding and having more awareness of it, and being able to have a visceral experience in the sense that I can feel it, but not so much that it's moving my body involuntarily. I can definitely increase the energy in my body, and then my body does yoga, or it does mudra. It kind of moves into things, into positions, into sounds, into body movements that my body needs to heal, that needs to be more aligned. But it's a relationship between relaxing into what the energy does and moving my body. But I'm not really moving my body. I'm mostly relaxing. And sometimes I just wish it would go on for longer, but that means I need to increase the energy within my body. So I would focus more on your spiritual practice, on your meditation, on feeling energy vibrate and pulsating in your third eye, and just asking yourself that question. When it isn't, then what do I need to be doing in my life to help increase that experience of energy? And absolutely doing your shadow work and doing your emotional release when it's there, and working with the feminine pathway and working with the masculine pathway. But then you want to keep coming into this place of, like you said at the end, you found the integration, you found that in a marriage in yourself, and you're aware of your shadow work. But I think good integration means your meditations are very deep and peaceful, and you have a visceral experience of the energy, but you can both observe and control it. And that answer is very different in the online course, and it's slightly different in level 1. And so just, yeah, notice that growth. It's quite related to what Layla was saying about getting used to the descending energy in the body, and suddenly she's getting angry with the waiter, because that's our shadow work right there. It's letting energy descend, and it's coming back into what have we bypassed. If I give this chakra, this communication center, more energy, where is it still unhealthy? Great that I have angry, and that I have boundaries, and that I have power and I can use it, and these are important things about being a human and living in duality. But where am I still negatively reacting? Where am I not taking responsibility? And when we do our shadow work and we descend energy, these things become more apparent in our life, and then it's all a judgment whether that is a healthy or an unhealthy process. But I think allowing ourselves to realize both is where the emotional intelligence and growth and compassion all come from. The manual for level 1 and level 2 will come eventually, and also the videos. I want it to be good, so it's taking a lot of time. I understand it's frustrating for you guys that it's not ready, so I'm sorry for frustrating you, but when it's finished, it'll be good. I would say you have to make it worth it. So really ensure that you want your intention. This is kind of a bad analogy. Is it worth sweat, blood, sacrifice? Is this intention that I'm doing my practice for, is it worth what I want? So that at least you have some energy and you have some desire over it. And then just do more warm-up. So make sure that you shake at the beginning. Make sure that you do 3 minutes of holotropic breath work, so that energy is really moving in your body. And for as much as you can, activate your sensuality and your sexuality, because if you have those things going, if you have more oxygen, it is pumping, your heart's pumping harder, the blood's running through your body, and you have something that you desire and you're a little bit turned on, then you'll find that you have the 100%. But if you don't really want your desire, then you won't have the 100%, because you have to see that if we're waking up our energy in the way that we're learning, that is our spiritual store of energy, and we're spending it to clear our field, clear our system, to get alignment. But then once we have our alignment, if we carry on, then we need to be manifesting something. We need to be drawing it towards us. And what the level 2 course is more about is partially about is increasing the spiritual store of energy in our body, so that our Kundalini activations, our Kundalini risings, our ability to expand our consciousness is sustainable. So how do we keep increasing that store of energy, not just moving it through our body and then relying on other things in the same way that people will rely on drugs? We're trying to rely on our breath and our sound and the energy inside. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points that you mentioned. When somebody's body starts to move and the session has been quite uneventful, just think of, in your mind, working with multiple systems. So as long as that your awareness is not focused on, now this is moving, I need to do something, that you've got this expanded state of awareness, that you have these multiple systems kind of encoded in your body because you've done the trainings. You don't need to think about them, they're just there. Then focus on the flow of working tantrically. So just start to increase that flow of energy through the body, if they're in the masculine or if they're in the feminine. Get the field contained in your aura and their aura, so kind of physically see it, and then just notice as that energy is moving and as they're breathing out, they're expelling their chi, that you're containing it in that field and you're finding that flow. Now, if you just start with your mind and a few small hand movements and then increase the flow through the root, then the chi in their body is going to build. And as the chi builds, they'll feel safer to let go more. So often this not surrendering or not letting go is just they're not used to the practice, and they feel that they'll be letting go of their energy, so they won't be getting it back. So you have to kind of make sure that the chi is increasing in order for them to let go more. And absolutely, it's not about just flailing around it and having a lot of movement. But if somebody is very blocked in their hips and they finally start to release from the hips. We want to contain the energy in their field, so we're not kind of doing this, like throwing it all away. And when you see some people, practitioners, work, okay, well, we talk about all of this. I shouldn't talk about level 2 so much. Yeah, so just work on increasing the flow of chi through their body. And Kat's going to start working for us soon, and I think through the online platform, in one way of finding new clients, something we want to start introducing is to have some support for you guys to create smaller gatherings. So to get 6 people together and to start to facilitate group spaces, but not in this kind of Shaktipat activation, to facilitate the space where you teach them about their breath, you teach them the introduction knowledge, and then you kind of start to hold a group container. So after this epic teaching tour that I'm doing, then when I'm back, I'm going to be doing some work on the manual and things, but most of the summer or the spring to summer next year, I'm just planning to get all the manuals completed and a lot of more online training and different things that you guys can tap into to help you hold group spaces, to help you work with more clients, help you find more clients. Kat's going to start working for us to support that. Maybe Stuart as well from the last IT place. Like, this whole platform has been, it's been a huge expense and a lot of work, and it's still not really working as we like. So there's still, so that will come, and I think that would be great if you feel maybe you need to do level 2 first and have, or we just have like an online container that coaches you guys to feeling, yes, I'm going to hold a group session now of 6 people, and I'll work with you preferably in a smaller group, if this makes sense, who wants to hold group containers, and then to have a separate group of people who want more coaching to hold online de-armouring sessions. Then we can kind of create these focus spaces where you're getting more one-on-one education from me, and like smaller group circles focused on these 2 topics of self de-armouring online to get online clients, and holding group spaces and creating like meetup gatherings so that you're advertising into a bigger audience. If you want those things, please message me, because they're a lot of work to put together. And then if it's just one person, you know, I'll still do it, but it's good to know that it's wanted before I put the effort in. So I think really it doesn't matter at all. It's all an illusion, and you make it up. But then it does matter, because it's an illusion and you're making it up. So you shouldn't give me all of your power and for me to tell you if it's good or if it's bad. It's up to you. From my perspective, if I am running energy and meditating in my space, and my space is clean, then it feels really good and it's more expanded. And then if I'm doing the microcosmic orbit or meditating on the tube, then I'd want to protect myself more. But I would imagine you're improving that environment by meditating. So if you just drop the level of selfishness a little bit, like, is this good for me? And then just realize that meditation is just good. So maybe if you're meditating on the tube, you're not benefiting from it so much, but maybe everybody on the tube is. You could adopt that belief, and if you believe it, it will become more true. You can adopt so many different beliefs. You can adopt that you meditate better on the tube because there's so much negativity in there that you're transmuting. Or you can believe that you meditate better on your own because there's so much purity around you and you're at peace. It's totally your belief. And I would focus on that. It'd be very hard for somebody to do a scientific study and prove the power of belief wrong and say, no, it is always in a temple. It's up to you. Because before we give sessions, even though you're not giving so many anymore, but just talking about your energy levels, and this probably isn't directly related to you, but it's a very important point for the whole group, is to make sure that you do some self-practice before you give a session and kind of monitor where your energy is, then give the session, and then do some self-practice afterwards, and make sure that you're your energy's here when you start, and it can go, yeah, you can do all kinds of things, but then make sure you're at a similar level when you finish. Otherwise, you might be depleting yourself. So you really want to charge your body up beforehand, and then make sure you're really charged at the end. We have to make sure we're not leaking energy, and we're not facilitating their experience with our chi. And just as you said, you stopped giving sessions, but you also broke up with your boyfriend at the same time. It's really hard to know what was affecting your energy. Is that because you're not giving sessions anymore? Now you have all of your life force back. Whereas then giving all of those sessions has helped clear your pathway. So suddenly you have more energy because you've stopped giving. So it's still not a direct loss. Or is it because your ex had a lot of cords attached to you and he was draining your energy? Or is it because now you're in a celibate state and you have your own energy running through your body? It's really hard to know, and it's potentially all three of them together. With your sadhana practice, if those 10 minutes are feeling great, then that's good, go with it. But we want to make sure that we still can sit still for an hour, that if our life depended on it, we still could go to a Vipassana and at least get through day one. Maybe you don't want to do 10 days anymore. I particularly don't need to do 10 days. I don't feel like doing 10 days of sitting is good for me, but being able to choose not to let the body go into those movements is very important. And we can kind of go into belief systems that we should because it's good, or we're scared to lose it if we don't relax our body and follow through it. So start to create the discernment in your body that can choose. And sometimes you're just choosing not to say that you can. I'm just saying no to prove I can say no, and that I can take that energy inside and take it into my third eye and sublimate it in my spine. The bodily movements and the movements of the feminine are all good, but can I go into like stillness and complete penetration? The masculine path is still important. Don't abandon it completely. And because sounds like you're in a constant state of awakening, and your shadows are clearing out, so you keep remembering the situations. Now that's great, but because you're in a non-dual state, there's not so much as good or bad. Check that there's not some kind of entities that are attached to you and like, oh wow, she's got a lot of energy, she's sustaining it, she can run it all through her body. We can just keep triggering negative emotions and memories, and then that's creating a lot of energy, and then you're being fed from by kind of a pleasant kind of torture, if that makes sense. So don't let your field then be susceptible because you're in a non-dual state. Now you can if you want, because maybe that's your life path. Maybe that's teaching you a lot. At that place, it's just beyond good and bad. The energy is unlimited and it's sustainable, and you can have all of these experiences. And what's important in that is to start to choose the kind of experiences that you want, that your will has to become a little bit stronger. Otherwise you are at, I don't even want to say risk, because those entities are you, and those entities need food and you need the experience. I hope that's not too abstract. So just kind of, be mindful and conscious of that process. Yeah, it kind of ties into the other answer that I forgot, in that our consciousness and our experience of life can be very big. And if you imagine how, on one level, how intelligent we are, and another level, how perfect we are, in order to enjoy the dualistic experience, we have to shrink who we are and forget what we know and create a little bit of trauma in order to have an ego and a personality. And as we do these practices, then our consciousness can get so big, and then everything just seems to make a lot of sense, and it's also simple, that we start to get bored. So then we kind of need to go back into the matrix somehow, or we do our shadow work, or we purposefully degrade our vibration because we're actually scared of having that level of consciousness in a body. We go kind of crazy. Can you imagine being who you are now and sitting on a conveyor belt at a fish factory, just sticking numbers on boxes? To live that life, you either have to be very good at meditation or lower your consciousness to survive. So as our environment changes and gets better, and our consciousness heightens or becomes more sensitive, we need more things to stimulate us. And to a point, we don't like living the same thing over and over again. Things have to keep changing. energy wants to change, the experience needs to transform. That's why this practice shouldn't be the only thing that you do, that you should have other things that you bring in because they inspire you, they keep the diversity in your life. So it might be that I've done, this was working for 2 years and now it's going to stop working. You're like, what am I doing wrong? Nothing, just something has to change. So just facilitating change in your practice is often better than doing shadow work or decreasing your consciousness. But then we have the problem that we expand so big, we can't maintain everything that we are. So then if we can't maintain everything that we are and we need to change, then we're changing something or we're sacrificing something or something's losing. And then we have this mentality in our brain that every time something needs to die to create life. Actually, it really doesn't. Where life and energy is abundant, but things need to change. And sometimes we can bank and grow, but we can only grow so big. So when we change that mentality, it's not about killing things to get their energy and put it into something else. It's actually seeing that life is abundant, energy is abundant, but I can only maintain so much without having such a level of consciousness. I can't be human anymore or enjoy it, or everything that I have starts to fall to pieces. I hope that's making sense. So just look for things that you can change in your life and then accept. If your life is calling you back into the corporate world, really commit to, don't go backwards, don't do it the same. You can go into a situation and you're different. So that means your relationship, if you go into, and I know you said you don't want advice, but I mean, this is bordering on the levels of advice. I'll try not to be too dictatorial, but if you have to
I'm
go
okay
back
with
into
advice.
yeah, if you have to go back into that corporate world, what are the commitments that you make to yourself in order to make your environment different? We talk a lot about, if I change myself, my environment has to change. Now, as we change ourselves so much, we get to the point that our consciousness and our evolution is of a different vibration. So then we need to go back into this mainstream world, and how do we merge with this vibration? And this is where our ego is going to have a little fight with the mainstream and think that we're right and superior. And maybe we are, maybe we're not, who knows? But the point is that we stay true to ourselves and our vibration. And if you have to go back into that corporate world, maybe there's a reason. And there's different options. You can just create some diversity in your practice, or you could create some diversity in the corporation. You have a lot of choice in those two. Okay, let's start with a meditation for around 20 minutes together, finding a straight spine, somewhere we're comfortable, working with our breath. Let's give you all a moment to find a place. Physical place and space and time. And then start to find a place where we rest, conscious awareness in our body. Where do we immediately rest conscious awareness in our body? Is it in our third eye? Is it in our heart, our gut, somewhere else? And connect with this Ujjayi transformative breath, breathing in and out through the nose. A few pumps of the pelvic floor if you need to. And start to move conscious awareness up and down the spine, through the body. Just observe conscious awareness moving up and down our spine. Moving with our breath, with our awareness. And as we get a whole body awareness, by moving conscious awareness up and down our body, up and down our spine, from our toes to our forehead. And start to work with expanding and then shrinking conscious awareness in our field. So find where it is in our body, if it's in our heart, if it's in our third eye right now or somewhere else. And then feel conscious awareness expanding around the body like a big egg shape. The whole body is in conscious awareness, aware of everything. And then decrease, shrink conscious awareness down to the tiniest point in your heart, or the tiniest point in your third eye. And for the next 10, 15 minutes, work with the transformative Ujjayi breath, moving conscious awareness up and down the spine through the masculine pathway, moving conscious awareness all through the body, through the legs to the head, the feminine pathway. And then the same breath, use it to expand your field, and then to bring conscious awareness back to a focus centered point. You can make some sound as you breathe. At any moment, if you lose connection with conscious awareness, moving up and down your body, expanding and getting smaller, simply make more sound with your breath. Have a more aggressive Ujjayi. And pump your pelvic floor quite hard, 6 or 8 times, until you find that connection with consciousness again. And then see energy and consciousness as the vibration, the sound from your breath is moving consciousness through your body. If you lose awareness, just come back to the sound of your breath. And for the last few breaths, let's just synchronize our breathing, focusing into the spine. Feel conscious awareness rising up the spine. Descending down the spine. Rising up the spine. And then from our third eye, feel that consciousness expanding out into our field, encompassing our whole body. How big does it get? How far can we stretch our consciousness? How much can it encompass? And then feel consciousness shrink back down, coming into our gut, into our sacral, the root of our spine. And then breathe consciousness back up our spine to our third eye. Let it expand out into our field. Consciousness decreases in size. It comes back to the root of our spine. And this time, just let conscious awareness settle in our heart. And open the space to share with each other. Thank you.